My name is Naomi Mizushima, and I am the founder of 1000 Cranes for Recovery. So today I'm sharing some insights into how we manage staffing for short-term projects at 1000 Cranes for Recovery and how it could serve as a model for others. As you know, our organization, 1000 Cranes for Recovery, is relatively young. It was established 2 years ago, and despite having or being small and lacking employees, actually, we're not employees, and or an office for that matter, we've managed to conduct a total of 118 workshops or sessions. Approximately 30 of them were on a volunteer basis, and the remaining 88 were funded through Department of Mental Health API USCC program. Okay, so our primary purpose is to address the pressing issue of mental health within the Asian American community, which is the fastest growing demographic in the nation. According to CDC, or the Disease for Central Control and Prevention data, suicide is actually the #1 leading cause of death among Asian American youth age 15 to 24. And this is true of no other racial group in this age range. So despite this disparity, very little attention and research is paid on this alarming data. And what is even more alarming is that Asian Americans are the least likely racial group to seek and utilize mental health services. And the Pulitzer Center, for instance, indicated 8.6% of Asian Americans sought help for their mental health compared to 18% of the general population. So now let me go into 4 key tips that have guided my work with 1000 Cranes for Recovery. Let me see if I can do this right here. I mean, this kind of like moves around, so. Okay, so tip number 1. Okay, so what is your passion? Which is going to drive basically your organization. So it's defining your reason and aligning it with your mission. So my reason is that I founded the 1000 Cranes for Recovery because, like my family, there are many, many Asian Americans that have long suffered this pervasive disease of mental health condition existing in secrecy, and it's endured in isolation. And it's usually caused by cultural stigma and shame. So the issues surrounding Asian Americans are very complex, and especially for first and second generation Asian American families, because they hold a lot of their values from their country of origin. And cultural stigma, they are causes a lot of Asian Americans to be untreated and undiagnosed and hidden, and leaving a lot of the factors to be awfully or often daunting. As a result, Asian Americans' mental health issues often last a lifetime with the highest rate of suicide. So the most important step that we found, which is the most difficult one, is to break the silence and to start talking about Asian American mental health and learn how to break the cultural stigma and model minority myth and build cultural humility. Okay, I knew that I could not pursue this mission alone, and community collaboration was very important. So that's the reason for the name, actually, 1000 Cranes. So 1000 Cranes is based off of an old Japanese tradition where the community members unite to fold 1000 origami paper cranes, like the ones you see in the screen, to wish for someone's recovery. I owe myself much gratitude to so many community members, including Libby, to have stepped up to join our 1,000 Cranes for Recovery mission, which is to raise awareness, educate, and promote wellness activities to better serve the Asian American community. And I especially owe, much gratitude to my colleague, 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, for our executive director, for his undeterred leadership. Go on to the next slide. Okay, tip number 2 is build courage. Okay, so in order to do this effectively, I found that the following was really important. Put your mental health as a priority. This I'm going to explain through my next slide. So there is a book that I highly recommend called What Happened to You? And this is by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And Dr. Perry explains that your 5 senses all of your 5 senses goes through the bottom half of your brain, which is right here, the brain stem, or this other area that I can't pronounce, but anyways, that area is pretty much where your fight, flight, and freeze reaction exists. So all too often, especially people who have suffered through chronic stress, are stuck, more or less, in their emotional brain. So the problem is that if I express myself with my emotional brain, it becomes defensive. And I was often blaming and criticizing others, and without even knowing that it was affecting me physically. So let me go to the next slide here. Okay, so recently, CDC had actually started this program called the ACEs Aware, and this is in California as well. But ACEs Aware, it's like a questionnaire analysis, and they found that 62% of Californians, as well as nationwide, actually, had at least experienced one ACEs. So ACEs means adverse childhood experiences, and there is a list of questionnaires that the ACEs awareness.com, I believe, or .org provides, and you fill it out. And I found myself to have actually 4 of the ACEs experienced. 26% of the Californians had experienced 4 or more of the ACEs. And surprisingly, well, that's where I found that I was at pretty high risk. If you're 4 or more, so according to this chart, this is the 10 leading causes of death, and sorry that it's in Japanese as well. But looking at the English part, you can see that if you have 4 or more of the ACEs, then you are at, for instance, with heart disease, 2.1% or times higher risk. And you can see that Alzheimer is 11.2 times higher. And then you see that suicide attempt is 37.5 times higher for those that have unaddressed ACEs. So for my case, I was able to address some of my ACEs, but I did end up with number 4, for instance, and also number 8. And my husband also ended up with cancer. So he and we both had 4 or more ACEs. So I think it was important for me, anyways, to recognize and to start off there, that what ACEs or stress has not been addressed or not. So, okay, let me go on to the next. So in addressing, when I say addressing them, then it's basically to help recognize and develop grounding tools. So when I say grounding tools, everybody's different. And for myself, I found that grounding tools like RI, Recovery International, had helped me a great deal. When I mention these grounding tools, the reason why that I use, or the reason that I use them pretty much on a daily basis, but when I use them, it's to help me better communicate from my, not from my emotional brain, but from my more logic brain, which is the cortex. And I don't know if you saw that. Maybe I should go back. Let me see if I could go back and see. Oh, not this one, but right here. Okay. So you see here, there's a cortex. So the cortex is the more smarter brain of everyone's. And so it's, the whole idea is for Dr. Perry is for us to learn to try to communicate using our cortex rather than our emotional brain. So in order to do that, or to get unstuck from the emotional brain, so we, I would use the grounding tools like this. So these are, oops, sorry, I'm missing there. Okay, stop. Okay, so for myself, it's meditation, for instance. I also do artwork. I use RI pretty much on a daily basis. I do go through therapy, but if anything, more than anything, actually, RI has been more helpful. RI, by the way, is there's many sessions provided through Share on their website, I believe, and it's online as well. Yes. So RI is it's evidence-based self-help method, and it's based off of CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, where you train your brain to become more calm and to help yourself get beyond your emotional part of the brain, and so that you're able to make decisions and communicate effectively. Okay. So there's also other things that I do, which is like daily breathing exercises for my chronic respiratory issue. And I also use an app, a free app, which is not in here, which is called 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝘀𝗲𝗏. And what it does is that the free app and my Apple Watch monitors my stress level. And so I'm able to see, okay, after I do meditation, after I do RI, where is my stress level? And it helps me a great deal in getting to the level of where I'm most effective, most productive. So I do that, and then let's see. Let's go to, I think, the next. Oh, this here is actually another one of our, just to mention really quickly about Tanzaku, which is right here, another Japanese tradition where Japanese people would write their hopes and their wishes would come true if there's these like stars that are separated normally by the Milky Way, and they come together once a year. So they believe that it's a magical time that wishes would come true. City of Hope, the cancer center, that my husband went to, they also do the wishing tree is what they call it. So that's where we write our hopes and wishes for better health or better management. And so here is the storytelling that 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 might have mentioned also, and probably JR would be able to touch on that too as well. Okay, so going on. The next one is, okay, so, well, tip number 3 is, of course, define your niche market. So the Asian American population is actually huge and is very diverse. It consists of over 50 API ethnic groups and over 100 different languages and subcultures. So we narrowed our niche market down to the East Asian market. And the first and second generation East Asian market. So Korean, Japanese, and Chinese. These 3 communities or countries are very different, but yet share some of the cultural barriers that have been a barrier to treatment. So for instance, with cultural stigma has been, and shame has been a big wall in seeking treatment. So, so we, as Libby had mentioned, we target our workshop and sessions to the most underserved East Asian community, the first and second generation, and we use it in languages that of their origin. For instance, we collaborate with the Korean community churches. Many Koreans are religious, and so we hold Korean sessions or workshops through a Korean pastor, for instance. And then with the Chinese, JR would be able to touch on that because he's bilingual, bicultural Chinese, and myself, I'm bilingual, bicultural Japanese. So we're able to pretty much effectively reach those markets. So cultural collaboration, with organizations with service that targeted community is very important in overcoming these barriers and ensuring that our incentives are accessible and impactful. Okay, so let's go to the next one, the last one. So, okay, so tip number 4 is basically cultivate and embrace Zen Enso. So Zen Enso means it's a Buddhist one-stroke Japanese calligraphy. And you might have seen this before in certain areas, and maybe Buddhist churches, whatnot, but it's of an incomplete circle. And the Zen Enso symbolizes embracing not just yours, but other imperfections. So it's every enso, this is called the enso, is not the same. And every enso, Zen enso, as yours, is unique and should be recognized and embraced. So at 1,000 Cranes for Recovery, our mission is to combat cultural stigma through raising awareness, education, and wellness promotion with cultural and artistic humility. So we strive to dare greatly, knowing that even in failure, we're making strides towards positive challenges. By employing these principles and fostering a culture of collaboration and resilience, we believe our approach to manage and staffing for short-term projects can serve as a valuable tool for others. Thank you for your attention, and let me introduce JR. And there you are, and there I am too. Okay, so JR, would you like to go on? I'm going to stop sharing,
Yes.
if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Naomi, and thank you, 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, for this opportunity to present. So I do have a PowerPoint slide, but I think for a small group, I can just kind of share about the question that I was asked from Libby. I think the question revolved around that tips for kind of working with marginalized groups such as Asians and Asian Americans, right? Like how can like how can we do it successfully? And especially bring people in with different cultural expertise and also lived experience to fulfill project. And we know that a majority of us, again, my assumption is that work in a nonprofit setting. So our projects are, there's cycles, right? Our projects could be 3 months long or 3 years long, just all depending on the fundings. So this really make me, okay, so I'm sharing again from my perspective, is that this really make me think about how can we make the best or take the best advantage of this whole thing, right? So again, my background, I got my master's in nonprofit management. So I got the quote unquote, the formal education about running nonprofits. That being said, we know that the moment you start running projects, the moment you start doing work in a community, all you have learned at university just kind of went out the window, right? I don't know if you heard that saying before. That I forgot who said this. I think one of the generals back in long time ago that like a military strategist say something like this: that you can plan the war down to the minute, down to the bullet, but the moment the first shot is fired, everything changes, right? So coming from this perspective is that so this is a question that I've been dealing with, asking myself last 15 years. That is how long I've been working in the nonprofit world. So how can we, whether no matter what type of nonprofit, again, I'm talking about majority of us probably work with associated with small to mid-sized nonprofits. So I'm not talking about Bill Gates or Melinda Gates Foundation. No, I'm not talking about them. Or talking about more like us, like smaller, maybe mid-size. So, and on top of that, we working with marginalized groups of people of color, LGBTQ folks, women, right, immigrants. And on top of that, we have this extra layer challenge of mental health stigma, right? So for the following 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I'll be sharing with you some of the tips and some of these things that I've learned throughout my years, and using specifically a current project that we have as an example. The current is called Storytelling Theater. So it's funded by Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. And I would share a little bit more about Storytelling Theater a little bit in detail later. So, all right, so my first thought, so when Libby invited us and when I saw the questions, the first thing came to my mind is that, well, something that I've been learning and something that I have been sharing with Naomi, and we have talked pretty a lot in depth, is that how can we run a nonprofit organization or a nonprofit project more like a business, more like a small business? And again, this idea is not my original idea. I learned this from my mentor in the past, right? And we truly believe that if businesses can run a little bit more like nonprofits and nonprofits can run a little bit more like small business, I think the world would be a little bit better. So yeah. So that being said, I know some of you kind of like when you heard that, like, what? Why and how can we run business or nonprofit like a small business? Because we have all these laws, all these regulations and policies, right? So, and I want to say, I hear you. Yes. And, but that being said, technically and legally speaking, when it comes to IRS, the requirement from IRS is pretty straightforward. It's that as long we don't as long we execute or fulfill the mission of the nonprofit, there's a lot of leeway on exactly how we can run a nonprofit, right? And then there's two rules, two quote unquote rules to not run nonprofit, especially the board of governance, is that the boards of nonprofits, their jobs are governance, meaning that vision setting and oversee the executive director. That's one. And second is physical responsibility, including fundraising. All right. And I just want to emphasize that these two rules or policies are not laws required by IRS. These two are just what we call general good practices that nonprofits are practicing. So the reason I'm bringing this up, I brought this up is because that what this means that it gives us a lot of leeway in a way to run nonprofits. So again, so going back to this little bit mindset of like shifting this mindset of how can we run nonprofit a little bit more like business. Again, I'm not saying that throw away nonprofit practices. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that how can we incorporate some of these what I call better business practices. And let me give you one example is that when it comes to business setting, and by the way, I have a similar with Naomi that I do have quite many, a number of years working, running small businesses. So in a way, I have, so in a way, I appreciate certain practices for nonprofit that I think can be extremely beneficial for us, especially running nonprofit projects. And then so here's some of the tips. One is that the example I used earlier is that a lot of time our projects, our programs are grant-based or funding-based, meaning that there's a long-term or short-term. So when we recruit, whether it is volunteers, short-term staff, long-term staff, administrator, contractors, vendors, I always recommend make this point really, really clear at the very beginning. So going back to storytelling theater projects, right? So the background of this is that we got funded to provide mental health educational workshop with a twist. The twist is that by combining live theater as part of our mental health workshop. Why live theater? Because we know that the power of storytelling, right? When you hear a story, a lot of people feel very inspired. But just imagine if you can see the story in front of you. That could be even more powerful. So we are incorporating live theater into our mental health workshops. The goal is to hopefully through this live theater and using 𝗣𝗿𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 theater for the oppressed, meaning that theater for the oppressed, meaning that we bring the theater to the people. That's one. And second is that the audience, the spectators, they are not going to sit back and watch. It's not like going through a movie theater or sitting at home watching Netflix. No, this type of theater engages people. So the audience, the spectators have to engage with the facilitator, have to engage with the actors. And hopefully through this engagement, that learning opportunity will pop up. People will start seeing things a little bit differently. So this is the essence of storytelling theater. So we have finished, we have just recruited 6 actors or individuals to become actors. And we are in the rehearsal phase. And per county requirement, we have to deliver 15 of these workshops / performances. So going back to what I was saying, this time frame, long-term versus short-term. When I was recruiting the individual to become actors, and we also have a coordinator, I also have a playwright. At the very, very beginning, I set the expectation very, very clearly in terms of timeline, that this is 1-year project. And even with the actors, their commitment is only going to be 8 months. Right. So what this means that internally, you and your staff or other volunteers, we really need to spend some time to really understand what we want to accomplish. What are the deliverables? What are the outcomes? What are the specific goals and objectives and tasks? So I lay all these out. So when I convey to my actors or to our volunteers, I let them know exactly how many, not exactly, but about how many hours that I will need their support. I will need their commitment, right? So that's time. Second is clear expectation, meaning that I lay out exactly what they need to do, what I will do, right? So yeah, so again, come to moms and pops nonprofit. It's almost like everyone's is have to do everything, jacks of all trades. I hear you, and that's my job. That's Naomi and my job because we are the ones that running our nonprofit, 1,000 Cranes for Recovery, right? But when we are bringing up new people, we need to be very, very clear, right? We don't want to mislead them. And so there's something that I've been very, very cautious about is that I let them know exactly what I expecting them to do, what I need them to do. I written everything down, and I let them know that what I will provide as a project manager, right, as a program manager with storytelling theater, what type of support that they can expect from me, what I can do and what I cannot do. I let them know very, very clear. So going back to the next point is that know your strengths and weaknesses. I will let them know that what I'm good at, and I will let them know that what I'm not good at. And hopefully by having these clear expectations of their quote unquote job descriptions, timeline, payment, that will be easier to reach out to these folks, right? Because how do you say it, like, and it's a ripple effect, right? So I consider myself very, very lucky that I have found these six individuals that are willing to work with me on the storytelling theater project. And my expectation for myself for long-term wise is that what I'm doing right now, the way that I'm treating them, the way that I'm working all these out will impact not this project, but my future projects. Because if I do well, I know that these six individuals, they can vouch for me for in the future projects, right? So this is very, very important. So for me, is that going back to the strengths and weaknesses, and just be on, especially in our field, right? Be transparent, be honest with yourselves, with each other. And when I say transparent, I'm not saying that showing them all the contract documentation, right? I'm not saying that showing all the confidential information. No, I'm not saying that because a lot of documentation from LA County, they are confidential, right? And I will let them know that too, that there's certain information I'm 100% transparent. And there's certain other information I just can't. I have to protect people's privacy, right? So just letting them know that, setting up this expectation, I truly believe that it can improve our communication. It can improve the working relationship, and it can improve future recruitment, right? Because these six individuals, they are going to tell their friends and families about us. So the better we do, the better reputation that we can have. So these are some of the tips. And of course, there are these challenges from what I call mental health stigma, right, within our community. And of course, there are challenges that how available are people's timeline, right? So something you really have to think about is that, are these people working, volunteering full-time or part-time? All right. And these are the common challenges that we all have. And another challenge a very practical challenge is what I call the clash between capitalist society and mental health. Right. In a capitalist business society, well, corporation business world, bottom line, that is the goal. Deliverables, deadlines, results. Right. So it's almost like we don't, in the corporate world, at least I'm talking about traditionally and conventionally, historically, they don't really care about the process. They just want the results. They just want that bottom line. So that is one extreme. The other extreme is coming from the mental health perspective, the process side. How can we take care of our volunteers? How can we take care of our employees? How can we take care of our staff, right? So it's almost that this whole trauma-informed care and approach. So in a way, these two models kind of collide a little bit, right? So let me give an example that like, so I have ran like multi-million-dollar federal grants before. And I have, we had multiple, at one point, we have 15 contractors under us, right? And when the time to submit the report and deliverables, we have to do that so we can get paid. But just imagine what happened if two of our contractors, due to their own mental health challenges, by the way, some of our contractors, they have lived mental health experiences. Some of them are even consumers. All right. So what that means is that what happened, I'm not saying that consumer, I'm talking about in general. What happened if a couple of these contractors, whether they are consumer or peers or not, what happened if they didn't provide me the reports, the documentation? What that means is that I couldn't submit the report to SAMHSA, to federal government. And what that means is that none of us would get paid. Right? This is a very, very practical, like a very real challenge, a business project challenge. At the same time, we are doing mental health organization. Our deliverables are providing mental health education, self-care, wellness, right? So again, the challenge is that, okay, how can we inspire, make sure that our contractors do, quote unquote, do their job, at the same time, take care of their mental health, take care of their well-being, right? And so there's no black and white answer. I'm still learning, right? Like, so, and my best, quote unquote, solution now, well, my best recommendation is practice, use trauma-informed care and approach. It's one of the best tools, right? So this is something that, and it's something that I'm continuing learning, and something that I assume probably a lot of you have experienced this before. So if you have like better practice, if you have tips and tools and suggestions, please let me know, right? So the thing that one thing that I have been trying or learning, especially implementing using storytelling theater to overcome this challenge, is going back to this idea of leadership style. Leadership style. The question that I often ask myself, what type of leader I want to be? And a number of years ago, I learned this leadership model. It's called adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership is the ability to actively or mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges, at the same time thrive. And there are four types of leaderships, FYI. So there's what I call the dictatorship, right? Dictatorship is a leader, a manager, or a boss that will tell you what to do, right? No inputs, my way or the highway. And there's a democratic type of leadership, right? Democratic leadership is get everyone's consensus, get everyone's agreement before we move on to next step. And there's this bureaucratic leadership, right? Very rule-based. Everything have to follow by the book, right? You have to follow the rules. And last is charismatic leadership, meaning that it's very charming. You charm people, you inspire people, you motivate people. So these are the 4 different types of common leadership styles. And the adaptive leadership is the ability to navigate between these 4 different type of leadership styles, right? So again, using storytelling theater as an example. Right now, we are still finalizing our scripts. We are still in the early part of rehearsal. So at this phase, it's very democratic. I take inputs from my coordinator, from the script writer, from my actors. The more input, the better. And I try to get as much consensus as possible. But once scripts are finalized, once we are in full rehearsals, I become the quote unquote the dictator because I am the director. I will tell them what to do, what not to do, how to act, how not to act, right? There's little space for negotiation, right? And of course, the bureaucratic leadership is more following the paperwork because again, this is a contract from Los Angeles County. They gave me a list of requirements, what I can do, what I cannot do. And I have to follow that, right? And charismatic leadership, sometimes I have to pivot and shift, right? When we hit a roadblock between my coordinator and I, how can I inspire her continue to work? So the ability to navigate between these 4 type of leaderships, I think is a key. One of the keys for us to practice trauma-informed care practice, right? When the deadlines are coming up, right? When the budget are due, let me use another example. This I've seen it, experienced so many times. When the grant deadline is coming up, you are putting together a proposal, right? Again, at a very early stage, all ideas are welcome. But literally, you have 2 more days or 3 more days to put together this grant and submit it. Man, there's no time for democratic. This is time for dictatorship, right? Like, I need this paper right now. I need that. Like, it's like no negotiation because if you miss that submission by 1 minute, especially federal grants, your proposal's out. They're not even going to review it. They're not even going to read your title of the proposal, right? So this is an example how we can navigate between these styles of leadership. And so to kind of wrap it up, or to tie everything together, is that when you work with marginalized group of people, when you try to recruit them, whether they are volunteers, staff, part-time, full-time, or contractors, I highly recommend letting them know your leadership style, right? I've been really clear when I was interviewing candidates for actors. What I just shared with you earlier is exactly what I shared with them. I told them that my leadership style is that I'm pretty chill, I'm pretty democratic, but there will be times that I will be dictator. I will tell you exactly what to do, and there's no room for negotiation, right? And guess what? About 4 of them decided not to join because of this, and which is totally okay, right? Because I want to be, and this is what I mean by transparent, by honest. I want to let them know that what the process will look like. I want to set the expectation. I want to set the standard. And the last thing I want is that when I have to pivot from democratic leadership to autocratic or to dictatorship, and they freak out, or our relationship sour. So I prefer to have this established very, very early on than later on. So yeah, so some of you might be thinking that, okay, how about there's certain communities that are not that straightforward. We cannot speak that straightforwardly. And I hear you. I hear you. There's certain, there's this cultural aspects, especially within our Asian American communities, that we sometimes like to beat around the bush, right? We cannot speak that straightforwardly. I hear you. I hear you, right? Even when I interview, even when I was doing networking with other community-based organizations that are led by Asian American leaders, and also serve Asian Americans, I had to be aware of this sometimes. But that being said, you can convey these messages in a very professional, polite, and respectful way, right? By just simply acting, please, thank you, right? By using I statements, right? All these common, what I call great communication skills, that I truly believe that just by being polite, professional, we still can convey these messages within the marginalized community. So yeah, so to wrap it up, I just want to emphasize that sometimes, like, setting this expectation very clearly with, of course, you have to start with yourself, right? Know the projects, know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and convey that. Timelines, your personality, logistic, bureaucratic expectation, right? All this to the people around you. And my last tip that I've been doing is that I share notes with my people. So for example, my coordinator and I, whenever we meet, for example, for this whole storytelling theater project, we use one shared document. We use Google Sheet. I have my tab, she has her tab. That's how we take notes. The reason is because that, again, talking about transparency, she knows exactly what my expectations are, and I know exactly what she's thinking, what she needs. There is no he say, she say, they say. It's all there. It's all there, right? And then, so if we need to backtrack, if there was a miscommunication, we can always backtrack to our Google Sheet, to our shared note, to see, okay, what happened. And it's not about who is wrong. It's about what happened, where was the miscommunication breakdown. And we can literally locate that. And it has happened that I was saying one thing, she literally thought that I was saying another thing, and we both type it down. Right? And then when I look at her notes, I can see why she was thinking about the other direction. It's just purely miscommunication, right? And then for folks here being married or being in relationship for many, many years, you know that, right? You live with someone for decades and you still like, what? There's no same thing when it comes to professional setting, right? There still would be miscommunication, and it's okay. Right? As long we are straight, as long we are honest, we show our vulnerability. We use trauma-informed care and practice to take care of each other. Instead of shaming others, we try to understand where they're coming from. Maybe they have trauma, right? So anyway, so to wrap it up, that I highly encourage you all to also take some time to further understand your leadership style or styles. Because I know that if you're running a nonprofit, if you're running projects, right, especially the bigger projects, the bigger funding, you need to have these multiple leadership styles. And we need to learn how to navigate between these leadership styles. And the ability to do these, to navigate between different leadership styles, I truly believe that will give us more advantage, will empower us to better work with marginalized community, especially in the mental health setting. So that is that. Again, thank you so much for listening. Yeah.
Thank you, JR, for sharing that. I was actually taking notes as you spoke. And I love that you've taken the work that you're doing in serving Asian Americans and generalized it to marginalized people, because I really do think that transparency about expectations, finding ways to communicate well, considering people's needs as well as the deliverables of the project, really that could apply to almost any employee, even someone that's not marginalized. I think employees want that kind of clarity. So I think that's a really useful framework
Yeah,
for
thank
us
you.
to work within. Yes, thank you for sharing that. I wonder, could you explain to us a little bit more about the storytelling project that 1,000 Cranes for Recovery is doing? Because I doubt that the people here are aware of it. And
Okay, yes. So, yeah, sorry about that. I probably ran through it really, really fast earlier. So again, so this whole idea is inspired by Theater for the Oppressed by the author is called 𝗣𝗍𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀. Is that because traditional theater, right? People go to theater, people go to movie theater or stage theater, or people sit down on the couch and watch movies and stuff like that. Theater for Oppressed is that we bring the theater to the people. Why? Because we know that theaters are expensive to go. Even movie theater, especially nowadays, like $25 to go watch a movie. Oh my, it's crazy, right? So that's one. We bring the theater to the people. So that's model number one. And the model number two is that no matter how powerful the film or the play is, it could be very inspirational, educational. But for majority of people, everyone, is still entertainment. Remember that film, that documentary film, Inconvenient Truth, came out 25 years ago about climate change? Did we do anything? That film even won an Oscar. Did we do much? Not really. Because based on studies, is that people saw that is so entertainment. So again, the idea that we bring the theater to the people is that yes, still entertainment, but there's that extra level of commitment, that extra level intention that we're going to do something about this. So it is called, there's other phrases called psychodrama or educational theater. So that is the principle behind storytelling theater. Okay, so that's one piece. And the second piece is that ultimately our storytelling theater, they are mental health workshops. But instead of PowerPoint, right? Instead of me up there speaking, telling story, giving them signs and symptoms, don't get me wrong, all these are super important. But we're going to have 10, 15 minutes of live theater. Again, the power of seeing the story in front of you. And there will be opportunities that the audience, the spectator, will be engaging with the actors. And through this direct engagement, according with 𝗣𝗍𝗀𝗀𝗀, that's a real learning opportunity, right? That is the separates between entertainment from education or learning. So that is the model. And then our themes, we have two themes, two scripts. One focuses on the intersection, well, the relationship between immigration and mental health, right? Personally, I struggled with immigration for 27 years of my life, 27 years. And the impact of immigration on mental health is detrimental, negatively, not positively, negatively. So that is the first script. The second script is about the correlation between intergenerational conflicts and mental health. So these are the two plays. And then so personally, I have been involved with two different theater ensembles. And this is what exactly that we have been doing. We use theater in these community centers, in classrooms, in office space, right? Companies, universities would hire us to do this type of workshop, to do this type of training. That's why I know it works. And that's why I know that it can potentially work within our community. As far I know, this is the first time we are trying it in Asian American communities. And again, talking about transparency, right? when I've been telling my actors, I've been telling our community partners that like this model it ultimately is two uphill battles, right? One is mental health stigma, the other one is theater. People are like, what the hell, theater and mental health? So it could be this project, it could be it could be super successful or utterly failure, or I was somewhere in between. So I'm hoping somewhere in between. So the good news is that so far we already have about 7, 8 different organizations, community-based organizations in Los Angeles County have verbally committed to host us, right? In fact, 2 of them have written, quote unquote, written commitment. We already have the dates. So we'll see how it goes with this project. And I'm personally very excited because I think so far I'm getting a lot of traction, a lot of community support. And I think because I think it's because a lot of these mental health centers and clinics and organizations, they are doing amazing, great job supporting our people. That being said, they know the power of arts and culture, creativity when it comes to mental health, whether it is prevention or intervention or healing or recovery. They know. But that being said, they are restricted in a way, again, with the fundings, right? They don't have additional resources to provide these creative or innovative workshops to their community members or to their staff. Therefore, I think that's why we are getting a lot of great feedback or a lot of momentum, because these amazing people in the community, serving people, working with Asian American, providing them amazing support. Finally, they say that, okay, let's try something new, right? There's this opportunity to try something new. So yeah, so fingers crossed.
I love it, JR. I've always loved Naomi's ideas as well. I guess the thing that I find really special about this project is it's such an underserved community, and even people in Asian countries struggle to figure out how to send a mental health message. They're trying to figure it out in Korea too, which has, I think, the second highest suicide rate in the world. It's like nobody has really cracked it. But what I love is you're taking a group of people who culturally and probably through their lifelong conditioning have been taught not to talk about mental health issues, and they're now going to give a performance about it, a public performance. I feel this is very innovative. I agree with you that art has the ability to overcome a lot of these barriers, and so I think it's just really creative, and I'm so hopeful that this will be a very successful and impactful project, and that may lead to further projects that we don't know yet that could emerge from it. I just feel it's something that I'll tell you how I got interested in this line of work is the fact that my organization at the time had no Asian employees, and we're almost serving no Asians, and we're living in an area with lots of Asians, and we're struggling to figure out what to do. And so I joined a subcommittee, and we began to talk about this. I was the only non-Asian member of this subcommittee, and we talked about this for 3 or 4 years in the San Gabriel Valley, which is the most predominantly Asian area of the country. It's very highly like Chinese, Vietnamese, and also Korean. And it was, really opened my eyes as to the struggle. And even Asian serving organizations are also struggling. I talked to Chinatown Services, and I talked to Little Tokyo, and I talked to people from different areas, and everyone's trying to figure out, how do we get this across? So I feel that when people hear about your project, it feels like hope. Instead of being a difficult and depressing message, this is a message of empowerment and sharing and cultural. I just think it's a great idea, and I hope it goes a long way. I don't know. Like you, I don't know what will happen, but I mean, we may as well give it a shot.
Exactly. Thank you. And my longer vision is that is that, thank you so much, is that once, because right now, due to the contract obligation, we are required to deliver this within high Asian American population areas or
Yeah,
organizations. And but that being said, once this contract is over, we can deliver this anywhere we want to, right? We already have, we hopefully like if everything goes well, we have the actors, we have the infrastructure, right? So any folks here in the room here that are interested in the future, like want to collaborate on this, please let me know. Like I would be more than happy.
I think it's an amazing idea. If you want to put your email in the chat, there may be someone here who wants to connect with you. I think that I hope that you will keep me informed at least about upcoming performances so that I can spread the word about it and let people know and bring a little bit more light on this because it's a very difficult project. What you're trying to do is something that everyone's trying to do, and everyone is to some extent failing at it.
Yeah.
So I feel really excited about the possibility of reaching people who otherwise are suffering in silence, in isolation, not knowing what's available to them, or afraid to reach out. So I think this is all very important
Yeah, thank you.
to try and support this effort. Who knows? That's maybe the nature of art. It's planting seeds, and let's see what grows.
Exactly.
Yeah. Naomi, do you want to mention a little bit some of the webinars that you organized previous to this project? I know that you had a number of webinars that you put together, and I just thought it might be interesting for people to hear what some of those topics were.
Yeah, so the most recent one we conducted was for Recovery International, and it was at an in-person session for non-Asian participants, but using Japanese culture. So that's where the RI, the Zen Tanzaku, the colorful strips of paper. So, because for instance, with City of Hope, that's what they use in for their for their families and patients and doctors, actually, providers. So they all write messages of wishes or hopes to hang on the tree of hope. Yeah. So that's what we did for RI, and we also conducted other seminars like before with Share. That was a long time ago, but we had a number of community leaders that spoke, right? They shared their stories. So there's some really inspiring stories that I think people need to hear about. I learned a great deal about other, not just my own, the Japanese community, but the complexity and difference, diversity of other. Not in the Chinese community, it's huge, amount of diversity. Um, so it's really interesting and really important to learn, I think, of each other. Every one of us has subcultures, that we hold, and so I think it's important for each and every one of us to embrace each other's subcultures and differences, and not, it's not out there to take blame or to blame others or to criticize, but it's important, just to think like what's average for them would be, might not be average for you, but that's okay. People are out there to not annoy us, even though it is annoying, but it's not purposely, meant to do that. So I think that yeah. And one thing that I wanted to mention about when our JR was talking about leadership. So actually, that's really important part of the Thousand Cranes. because I would like to see younger people or other people, take more leadership. And what we're doing, or JR and I are doing, is we're trying to build the infrastructure so that it can be replicated. It can be, there would be other leaders. So we're hoping that we can train and bring in new leadership, and so that it continues. It needs to be sustainable. You can't really have something that is, you're the product, where if it's only yourself and you're a hands-on type of a leader, it's harder to pass on the baton, of leadership. So
So
I think it's important to be able to establish something that is able to repeat itself and go on to other, it can be adjusted to other communities, to other organizations, and whatnot. So
thank you.
that's
Thank
what,
you, Naomi. I do think that's a quality of a good leader, is to look at ways to replace yourself, to mentor others coming along that can also transmit your message or carry that message. And I see you doing that with JR. When I met you, you didn't know JR. Now you're working closely with him, and he's also carrying that message in his way, and he's mentoring other people. So I feel this is a good way to spread the message. I'm excited about it. I hope that Thousand Cranes will go far. Let's see what happens. I mean, it's very challenging work. On the outside of it, you might think, okay, we're going to take a group of marginalized and a community that is extremely resistant to any messages about mental health, and we're going to present them messages about mental health in the form of theater. The whole thing sounds pretty crazy, but I love it. I think it's great. I think it's the kind of innovation we need in our system, and I hope to see more of it. So I wish you well. Kathleen says in the chat, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
we hope to hear more about it. It's awesome. I mean, I second Naomi's observation about not assuming that we know. Like, I think cultural humility is so key with such a diverse community as Asian American community. So many languages, geographic, historical influences. I remember on our subcommittee having a long conversation. I said, well, let's put out our flyer in Chinese. And so then we had to decide which characters to use. Should we use the old characters, or, because Mao redesigned the Chinese characters, so we had this whole conversation about who are we trying to reach. And,
Yeah, yeah.
you might think it's an easy question. It's not. We had another conversation about what to serve at an event, because some people are vegetarians, but certain vegetarians don't eat certain things, and then it depends on where you're from, and they're not familiar with that food in this part of. So it's like it's a constant learning process, and you have to know your audience well, and you need to go to them, ask them, involve them, hopefully make them the executive director so that they come to it knowing these things, the way that JR knows, the way that Naomi knows. Naomi doesn't have to think to herself, I wonder how a Japanese person might respond to this. She has a sense of that already. So it's much easier to find a way to bring that message. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm very open. If anyone else has a question, a comment, I don't mean to dominate here. If anyone else would like to put your voice in the room, perhaps we can just give our presenters a hand. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.